Really, the size difference was very, very evident.
What's up guys and welcome. You are watching Fazi Fitness. So guys, channel membership is now live. Link is in the description and the first comment. Do check it out. That would really help support the channel. So let's start this video with an update from Regan Grimes. Less than 4 weeks out of this year's New York Pro. His comeback show after more than 1 year. So those delts are looking real round and very 3D. Especially in that footage. Which by the way is taken through the mirror. So we have to keep in mind. Regan has never been one of those guys who are ready weeks out of the show. And 4 weeks is plenty of time to fine-tune this and get chiseled. And be absolutely ripped. Of course, if we compare this to someone like Michael Krizo and how that man is looking right now, the level of detail on Krizo, that is on a whole different level in terms of that see-through skin and how the skin wraps around the muscles. But that being said, we have to keep in mind, Krizo is also doing this upcoming Pittsburgh Pro. But that being said, Regan has his own gifts and the man is very complete when he turns around. Both his back shots are just superb. The detail on Regan's quads from the back, that is looking very promising as he goes through that final stretch of this New York Pro prep. So this year's New York Pro is gonna be a real tester for a guy like Regan, because this show is also expected to have a very deep lineup, and we're gonna see some guys in there whom Regan has never beaten before. And a lot is expected of Regan this time around, as he's making his return to the stage after taking more than 1 year off, because the last show that he did, that was the Olympia back in 2023. So he's supposed to be bigger and denser in all the areas, especially his quads, his chest, and in his arms. And Stefan is the one calling all the shots here. Now Regan is someone who was always recognized as a genetic freak in terms of how big his frame is and how aesthetic and classic this guy is. But that bigger frame, that also made it quite difficult for him to put on enough muscle on that frame, where it looks completely filled out. For those of you guys who do not know, he has been competing as a pro for more than 6 years now, and we are still hearing that discussion whether Regan is gonna be big enough this time around to compete against all of those big guys like Michael Krizo and William Bonac and all these other top guys. So will Stefan help him unlock a whole new level, especially in terms of conditioning? Well, hopefully he does, because the chances of Nick Walker, the guy whom he said he's gonna beat at the New York Pro, the chances of Nick doing the New York Pro, they are looking pretty damn high. And Nick has just way too much muscle and way too much density and freakiness for a guy like Regan. At least that was the case the last time we saw Regan on the stage. So it's gonna be like a warm-up show for Regan. He's also doing Cali Pro, where he's gonna compete against a conditioning freak, which is Sasan Rafael. So we desperately wanna see how much size Regan has put on since the Olympia 2023, as that was his last show.
Really, the size difference was very, very evident when they were standing next to each other. But still, Sasan was able to take some poses from Andrew.
For the people out there who are still criticizing why Andrew won FIBO Germany against a lot more conditioned version of Sasan Rafael, well, you should listen to Tal Mannion's breakdown for the FIBO Germany this year. So even at the finals, when Andrew came in so much better than the prejudging, he lost the side chest and the back double biceps and also the back lat spread against Sasan. So the overall score, that was 5-3 in favor of Andrew.
Sasan has great quads from the front, but again, Andrew's overall size, he's kind of dwarfing Sasan in this pose. Sasan's front lat spread is not bad. Obviously, his taper could be a little bit better. His chest could also be a little bit fuller in this pose.
And what made the biggest difference in the favor of Andrew in that show was Andrew's unmatched size and his insane aesthetics and the way these guys put up together. So the fact is, even when this guy is off, his chest, his arms, and his abs are so goddamn great. It's just too goddamn hard to take your eyes off him. But there is something that Andrew desperately needs, especially if he wants to have a shot at those big titles like the Arnold and the Olympia. And that is the lack of hamstrings, especially in his side shots and also in his back shots. Because even with the improvements that Andrew has made over the past 1.5 years, he still isn't beating all those top guys in those side and the back shots. Unless of course he brings up his hamstrings.
Some guys can afford to be a little bit more off than others because of the physique that they have built. And of course, obviously that's not something that, when you're on the losing end of that you would like to hear, but everything comes into play in bodybuilding. It's not just one set of criteria. If it was just based off of conditioning, then obviously Sasan had the better conditioning.
And there is just no way the judges are ever gonna consider him for that Olympia title unless he brings a level of conditioning that we haven't seen from him before. The kind of conditioning that we also expect from a guy like Samson Dauda. So is that even possible for Andrew to get Hadi or Derek level peeled? Well, I'm gonna say absolutely not. And he knows that. His coach knows that. But with another planned off-season, he can make up for that size gap between him and the other top guys in his side shots. Guys, we have a limited time offer. If you buy any flavor of Bloodshot, you are gonna get a free Dying Breed t-shirt. The discount code is on the screen right now, and use the code Fazi10 to get 10% extra discount. Great to see the size coming back on Rafael Brando as he gets going with his Canton off-season. So this year has been far from ideal for Rafael Brando, but there is still plenty of time before the prep starts for the Olympia this year. Now we have to keep in mind Rafael isn't one of those guys who puts on size real fast, and that observation is based on his past track record. He doesn't want to put on size too fast and just risk blowing up his midsection either. So one thing is certain, there won't be any drastic size difference in his physique at the Olympia this year, maybe a couple of more pounds. But one thing is definite, he's gonna be very fresh at the Olympia this year, because that is the only show that he's planning to do this year. So not very often we hear these kind of remarks for any athlete, that out of a total of 8 mandatory shots, there isn't even a single shot, which is a weak point for Rafael Brando. He just doesn't have a weak shot. The only weakness is that the man is still struggling with the size factor, especially if we compare him to the likes of Samson Dauda or Andrew Jacked or even Michael Crizzle. So Rafael was 8th at the Olympia last year. His own expectations, that were placing top 5, but he just did not show up in that kind of condition to challenge those guys in the first call out. But still, he managed to jump 2 places from 222 to 2024. And if he continues to make those steady improvements, he 100% has the physique to move up in his Olympia placings. So the Brazilians see him winning the Olympia in the future. But for that to happen, Rafael still needs a lot more size. A full-blown yet a very sharp-looking Leandro Paris was spotted less than 20 days out of this year's Pittsburgh Pro, where the man is gonna face some of the biggest bodybuilding stars. Now we all saw how Leandro has crazy size, extremely combative from the front and also from the back. And when he starts hitting those shots and that vacuum comes into play, he has a very eye-pleasing physique. Now Leandro had way better and way more cap delts than Good Vito at this past Arnold Brazil, and that was pretty evident in some shots, like the front lat spread. Now we all agree that the Pittsburgh Pro is just too difficult of a lineup for a guy like Leandro. But after seeing his potential in Brazil, we all want to see him get maybe 5% better in terms of condition. And if he can maintain that same size while bringing in sharper conditioning and more detail, that is going to be a deadly package. So 2 years back, when this guy last competed, he was just way too small for the men's open class. He put in a lot of work and he came back a lot bigger this time around. And this is just the start of the season for him. At first, him doing Pittsburgh Pro, that just did not make any sense because he's heading into a show already knowing that he just won't be making top 5 or even top 6. But that being said, if he gets into that first call out, that will give him a lot of exposure, and that is gonna be a huge accomplishment for him. So we have been featuring Florian Parsons on this channel consistently from the time he made that big announcement that he's gonna switch back to the men's open bodybuilding from classic physique. And now that he's just over 4 weeks out of his comeback show, California Pro, his first show of this year, the anticipation on how he's gonna compare to the likes of Regan Grimes and Sasan Rafael, that is so real. So those quads on Florian are looking so goddamn phenomenal. Great separation on them, and that awesome quad sweep. And still a month to go before he has to step on the stage. So the good thing about Florian's return to the men's open class is that he did not rush back to the stage. He took his due time to get all that size back. And last year in his off-season, he went up to his heaviest ever off-season weight. Now I personally think his quads are just way too good for his upper body, and he needs more mass on his upper half. But that being said, switching back to the men's open, that is a step in the right direction. So looking back at his physique, when he was a rookie 4 years back, it is just so insane how amazing he looked at that shoe. So Patrick Tour was the one who helped him get his pro card. And just 1 day later, he jumped into that Portugal Pro. And the man looked phenomenal. So if there is one positive that came out of him doing classic physique for the past 4 years or so, is that his waist that stayed very small. So Sasan and Regan, they are both amazing competitors. So Florian is gonna be truly tested here. So hit the thumbs up button if you liked the video. And smash the subscribe button if you wanna come back for more. Thanks for watching.